From the moment I held the box of colors in my hand, I knew this was my life. I threw myself into it like a beast that plunges towards the thing it loves. We knew from that moment that we were forever intoxicated by color. That was, of course, the famous artist of the late Impressionist period, Henri Matisse. Sorry, I'm saying a totally pretentious version of it. Henry Matisse, uh, commenting upon Fauvism, wild beast, as one rather sardonic art critic commented upon. That was, of course, a quote from the Orson Welles modern art documentary, which was true. That's how Fauvism got its name. One particularly sardonic art critic said it was like Wild Beast that had no control, it had no grounding in color theory or whatnot. So, what I wanted to do today, I wanted to do a quick video in the screen capture style, because it very much is the way that I think about things. I wanted to do a quick, well, maybe knowing me, it won't be very quick if it's off the cuff. A quick video explaining, rather exploring and explaining the art of a good friend of mine, the writer, the podcaster, interviewer, um, aesthetic visionary, as I would call him, Robert Stark. Now, people know Robert, of course, from his famous, infamous rather, book, Journey to Vapor Island. But few people know that he is actually quite a good painter and visual artist. So I'm going to basically crawl through his Instagram, and I'm going to share with everybody some of my insights from his work of art and his general style. And the reason I start off with this quote, because he is a self described Fauvist, but I will probably explore a bit about how his works of art is rather, I would say, the smacks of a particular type of interior painting, interior illustration rather, that was very popular around the mid-century, around the like post-war period, sort of, you could say, like neo-decadent period, where you saw a rebirth of sorts in things such as art deco and then later fauvism, and then of course what people would call mid-century modernism. So anyways, just before we go on to this, I remember this was a few years ago. My God, um, when Robert Stark became more well known on Twitter, I remember this one interaction we had where he was, commenting on my stuff, and I said, "Oh my God, you're actually the guy that wrote Journey to Vapor Island. I love that book, right?" And he goes, "Oh my God, really, Gio?" Because at the time, way back in like what was it, 2016, you called the book degenerate trash. Yes, but of course, my opinion has changed, and yes, the book is filled with a whole litany of degeneracy. But who knows? Maybe one day I will give a review, or maybe I will talk about it when I actually do get to go on Stark Truth Radio. But let's get this started now. I'm going to do just a quick crawl, not quick, but rather a, a decent crawl through his oeuvre, and I will then explain some kind of deeper themes as to why this style is, I would say, even appealing nowadays. It tends to become, you know, it's becoming more prominent. I think that aesthetic posters on Twitter and Instagram, they've sort of taken the lead from the death of Tumblr, and they've been diffused throughout everywhere. But let's screen share, and we are here. Okay, so right off the bat, we have two very good images, or rather, a series of paintings around the Las Vegas area. So you have, what would you say, the Midwest or so? I forget the exact area, but you have this like here we have Wynn Las Vegas, so the Parasol Bar, and of course you have a flattening of the color plane. This is a general sort of theme with his work. You have almost, you could say, a lot of, at first glance, now, not to be harsh, but you have a lot of garish, some would call kitschy type of color work. You have very much this solid mass outsider artist type of feel that is very prominent among a lot of that sort of mid-century going into then later the later half of the 70s and 80s. You still had like a bit of the remnants of Art Brut. You still had like artists that you wouldn't usually consider being a part of the quote unquote official art world, um, having this type of style. So here is some shots that he has procured from the Parasol Bar. This is another one. This is again, I like how he's doing the different angles. I like how he is not afraid to explore the composition of the interior room. Um, and I'll comment a bit more on that later. So this is I believe the center mass in the Parasol Bar at Wynn. This is like the focal point. I think my mother was there. My mother has a few photos of this when she went to Vegas with her, besties. And here we have from Santa Barbara now, which is still in the same style. But notice how you have the like pink to taupe. What's that color they got there in that region of the U.S.? Adobe. You have this again this radical flattening of the color plane that's done in a very stark manner. There's a pun for you, stark. So here we also have um, sort of the vintage Las Vegas signs. Of course, this was all built by the mafia, as you know. And here we also have more interiors, um, more Fauvist interiors of the, I still believe it's the Parasol, or no, sorry, the Madonna Inn. And we have an exploration of space which is harmonious with each other and with itself. That's very popular in this mid-century modern style. Everything is flattened, everything becomes one in itself, and the aesthetic choices of various features in terms of decorative, the decorative aspect of features is sort of placed, it's a bit cast aside to feature a grand totality of each element in the room itself. Now, the thing that's funny about the interior space, in my opinion, and I think Robert Stark, he highlights this very well. Here is another view. I actually love this photo. This is, I think, is one of my favorites because you have, again, he's basically following the rules of art in terms of having the tree like light fixture in the center off centered, and you have this cascading pile of furniture, those sort of like fixed features. They're see, they're not really popular anymore, those wall features. It seems that well, I mean, let's face it, none of these like interior color choices or restaurant deco features, they're very popular anymore. It's all just very stark, minimalist, very like Scandi, or like, I guess, depending on which region you are in, either Canada or America, you have like a lot of wood features. You have no such thing as any sort of separation barriers between the patrons. You have like open room concept upon open room concept. It's very much been flattened, and any sort of kitschy, garish exterior feature is gone. So here you have this very like pink pastelly Fauvist, loud, no, it's so loud, my God. But it still suggests that there's space. There's still shapes that are predicated upon different degrees on the picture plane, going on to this one singular mass light fixture tree in the middle, which is very good. So you have more shots of Las Vegas. You have, again, these rooms. Now, what I wanted to explain is that the interior became quite popular in this period around the mid-century. Any time that there's sort of an excess of leisure, an excess of free time, every time that there is a greater affluence among the bourgeois sort of overclass, not even overclass, but sort of anytime, especially in America and in certain other places in Europe when there were those, few times of plenty, there was always this drive towards the interior. Now, the post impressionists, the Fauvists, did this very well because it took a bit of skill to do the sort of what would you say, the academicism and classicism of the French and then later London academies at the time. It took quite a bit of skill, especially for watercolorists, to do these interior rooms. But then later, the Impressionists got what was more familiar to them. Sorry, the Post Impressionists. They looked around themselves, literally in their rooms, and Van Gogh, um, Henri Matisse, Lautrec, you name it. They Derain, you name it. They painted the interior in such a way as now the landscape comes inward. But notice how in the age of anxiety, rather starting with the cusp of the 20th century, the interior painting becomes more prominent. The interior painting becomes deterritorialized. It becomes an aesthetic object that is now fully within the eye of the artist, that is then abstracted. For some reason, the interior becomes the fixation, the inwardness. And this can be very positive. It could be this sort of Lautrecian, decadent paintings of the lovers kissing in the bed. It could be, or it could be the utter hell. The hell is the other person, or rather hell is the inner person of painters like Van Gogh. Then later in America, you have Edward Hopper. You have the interior becomes the prison later on, whereas the interior was the safe space for everyone's decadent desires and longings and lusts they can explore. But then later, the interior becomes something of incredible alienation. And of course, it takes a lot of skill to really paint something, because when you are a landscape painter, there can be some things that are fudged by the mere fact that nature abhors a straight line. Nature abhors geometry in the sense of not the hidden geometry like the fractaling geometry, but rather the man-made sort of placement upon the earth through the act of these rigid geometric lines. In order to paint that, you have to sort of, in order to make a landscape out of it, you have to sort of like tune your mind out. So look at this interior and look at someone like Derain. You have the same abstraction of the picture plane. You have this same sort of, now the room becomes an aesthetic object. It becomes something that is colored with light. There is no separation. There is pure abstract, almost on the cusp of pure abstraction. You have this explosion of color that is totally off the rails. I mean, to tell you the truth, post-impressionism isn't my cup of tea. When it comes to this period, I'm much more in tune with tonalism, but I can definitely see the aesthetic worth of such an exploration to then later fully abstract color to the point where color is something that is so sensuous, something that is so apparent, right? And so Robert Stark, he does this quite well. He does these sort of interiors to the point where they're very lush and they're very candy like. They're almost too candy like in some ways. Um, but this one I do actually quite like, because the gray of the middle piece, that sort of gives it a bit of flair. Um, so here we have some more pictures that he's taken, I'm assuming, of Las Vegas and elsewhere. Now, Las Vegas is funny in terms of aesthetic exploration, because you basically have artificial light everywhere. There is no natural light. That's why, and you'll see later on when he paints some of these signs. I'll get into it. But here we have the interior. Can you imagine yourself, like, you're a tourist in Las Vegas. It's this like 70s, 80s kitschy pastel type of stuff. It's basically right out of the movie Casino. I could just imagine the mood. You have some kind of like some kind of prosty or whatever. You have some, or maybe you get married from Elvis, and this is like your first night. Painting inspired by the films Mishima, Life in Four Chapters. Yeah, it's funny because Mishima, he also dealt with those modern themes. But the hotel room later becomes this like non-place aesthetic object that Edward Hopper and others explored. But this one's a bit different. This one, it's not so much like the paintings of Hopper in the sense of the hotel room then becomes, something very stark and alienating, something very transient. Now, this is like you could immediately like if you had someone from halfway the world around the world, you could tell this is Las Vegas. You have like utter stark, like I keep saying the word stark, it's some kind of mental thing. You have utter like terrible darkness around like the most garish pastel neon lights there is. And there really is no other place in the world kind of like it. Maybe Atlantic City, to some extent Niagara Falls, where I come from, or rather I live near. Anywhere that attracts like these, to quote Tool, huge festering neon distractions of the casinos. It's that's where you're going to get a lot of it. So let me look. Okay, so here we have some foliage. This is like pure Fauvist. This is pure, late impressionist foliage. These are like the artificial plants that they import into Las Vegas. I quite like this one. Here we also have another view of the interior. Let me go back to the. Let me sort of go further. So let me just see the limit. This is the man himself in a gallery he did with some art hose. Very, very stylish. Oh boy. Oh. And I I think he promotes these rooms a lot that he paints, but I really love the signs. We'll get to that. But I wanted to give you just a quick comparison. So here we have the vintage Caesar's Plaza, the Palace, Caesar's Palace. Um, we have this mid-century modern illustration where the people are abstracted, they're not looking like, some of them are with each other. You have like, what is it down here, you got like Donald Trump at the piano bar, you have like very much the Vaporwave statue bust. You have people that are half naked, people that are this is really indicative of like the 80s decadent excess before the corporations rolled into Las Vegas. I could just imagine this. What was the monologue at the very end of Casino by Ace Rothstein, Robert De Niro? He said, back in the day, the bartenders knew your name, you knew what girls you wanted. Now it's like if you order a drink, you're lucky to get it by Thursday. All the corporations rolled in. They blew up all the towers, the pyramids of Las Vegas. And you know how they built the pyramids again, the corporations? With junk bonds. So this is like a longing for a time of older, like mid-century decadence, where you could basically walk into Caesar's Palace and it wasn't this garish, terrible, touristy Americana that it is now. This is something else. This is a cavalcade of excess, if you will. So I love how so you have like the one staggering drunk in the corner. Um, I really like this. This is some of like his few illustrations with people. It very much also fits the vibe of his book, ironically enough. So there we go. But just to give you a quick comparison, let me go back to the hotel room and let me go to Henri Matisse's rooms. This is his like super famous one, the Dessert Harmony in Red, the Red Room. This is I think most people know what this is. I think, was it his maid or something? But here you have the same, the even nature itself is the same as the room from the inside. Notice that double action. Notice that. That's important in the sense of nature is abstracted, the way that we've made the room, the way that we've designed the interior now bleeds into the exterior through the power of man. This is, the pure overflowing of nature, but also, I mean, it's also to denote sort of a harmonious composition as well. Because say if this was a realist scene outside, which, I mean, if you look at the earlier works of Henri Matisse, I mean, he was, this isn't just like he was a bad painter, he couldn't do it. No, he was a very, very capable landscape painter. It's just that it would basically screw up the composition to have it any other way. Here you have of course, like in the changing curtain. This is one of my favorite of the interiors. I'm not a big fan of his interiors, but This almost is like kind of Stergian. It's very pink. You have the Oriental changing curtains. You have the statues. So notice that I think maybe Stark, he was getting some inspiration here. So if you were to go back, here we go. Notice that it's something, it's got a uncanny similarity, put it that way. We also have Martin Blanche, so who is a lesser known of the post-impressionists, but here you have the same sort of color scheme. You have the abstraction of figures to the point where they still retain their unique characteristics, but you still have that like Matissean abstraction of the form. And so, of course, the meeting rooms, the sort of interstices between the different populations coming together in these periods where the bourgeois is gaining more prominence in France and in London and elsewhere, the middle class is growing. So here you sort of have the same hyper accelerative aspect of it in the American context with Robert Stark's art. You have this sort of I forget who said it, the one guest on Joe Rogan. This was years ago. I think he was interviewing some director where he said that Las Vegas is a playground for the slaves, basically nowadays. But yeah, see, so someone says this echoes that of Toulouse-Lautrec. If you look at Lautrac's, I know I'm butchering his name. Don't at me. But it's got that same vibe. The abstraction of the picture plane, the sort of the very warm pastel-y color, not even pastel-y, but the warm reds, the warm siennas to the point of garishness, that's sort of, the Moulin Rouge painting especially. So here you have another architectural feature, La Cara, La Cadasan, Tabarba. Yeah, I'm butchering Babara. So here you have again this scene. It's almost right out of a Matisse or a Lautrec or something. I like this one because this is like total like design. This is like mid-century modernism. This is a good sort of prompt. So he's got Italian futurism. I wouldn't say this is kind of. I guess certain Italian futurists would say that this was kind of similar, but this is much more. This is like if you were to take futurism and like basically shove it through the lens of like vaporwave or something. So then here you have the signs. You have the famous the pavilion. So this is the famous pavilion sign. I really like the design. This is like a lot of vaporwave edits and music videos or whatnot, album covers. They like take this Las Vegas kitsch and they and they'll like use it. But this is one of my favorites right here. The golden nugget, the bingo. This is like when you have the I forget which movie it was, but I think The Simpsons, they ripped it off, but with Homer it was food instead of gambling. Where he's walking down the dark street and he sees all these signs lighting up, and they're very warm and comforting. This very dark desert plain, the night sky. You look over Las Vegas when you're coming into the airport. There's the only thing you could see is this huge, giant neon ball of the Las Vegas Strip. And so here you have very, very stark, very, very noton light and dark juxtapositions that you can really only find in places with Las Vegas that has huge amounts of artificial light. So here's another one from the pavilion. This one's all right. It's kind of simple, but this well, I'll get to that one. But this one I do like. It's like a still life. It's like a display. It's got that same vibe of Blanche and Matisse. So I'm I'm not going to lose myself. Let me go to this article by 99 Design. Wrap your mind around mid-century modernism. Mid-century modern design movement, which began somewhat around late 1930s, 1940s, was a natural progression for modernist movements that preceded, such as Bauhaus, the international style, was responsible for to the ostentatious Art Deco movement with the time node to no frills beauty, dedicated to function. So here we have urbanism, we have function, we have stark color choices, we have hard edge, things of that nature. Color was more present in the 1960s. More recent revival, muted color and pastels can be seen more frequently. So with Robert Stark, of course, we have the pastel colors, whereas mid-century modern, especially in the 60s, you had very strong, very like dyed type of colors. And a lot of this was because new colors were being synthesized and produced artificially, and they were cheaper. So, for example, Napathol Red is like one of the ones. Being a painter artist myself, I know this. Napathol Red is the brightest red that doesn't particularly give off, depending on the brand you're using, doesn't really particularly give off a orangey or a purpley tint. So it's like kind of in the middle between, warm hue orange, and doesn't throw off those like sort of cooler purpley type of mauve signatures. So a lot of these colors are being artificially produced. They threw these colors in everything. They even threw them in candies, even though they were carcinogenic. The discipline that first came to mind when hearing the phrase mid-century modern or furniture architecture design, but also had a massive influence on graphic design and typography. So here we have like sort of very vintage Americana typography that's very easily readable, very streamlined, bold, not a lot of cursive. This is really like the death of cursive, right? Um, they were cost-effective, natural postcards made entirely of cotton. The cards were depicted of new architecture, interior designs, suburban homes, roadside motels, city corners, monuments. So here we have, before the age of the total non-place, we still have somewhat of a regional identity with these, proto non-places, such as hotels, suburban neighborhoods, and so forth. And so, for example, Robert Stark in his art, he's really lionizing a type of Las Vegas that a lot of people say is dead, and it's become a tourist nightmare, and it no longer exists, because that's the whole point of, like, vaporwave, is that it's the lost future. It's the total Mark Fisher lost futures concept. It's a hauntological feature of the incessant need of capital to destroy uniqueness and to destroy localism, locality, regional identity, in favor of mass consumption, in favor of a simulation of what that place was. But here, Robert Stark is trying to do something very interesting, because he is trying to paint what Las Vegas used to be and what these places used to be. So, and I hate to say it, but mid-century modern kind of helped destroy a lot of regional identity in terms of, American graphic design, because then everything became just, it became this. It became just another, Norman Rockwell illustration. Some of the more famous in terms of like Helvetica, um, how to use the mid-century modern style. This isn't very important. Geometric shapes, different fonts, shades, grit, texture, playful contrast with each other. So like, yeah, like Line Decker is another one. You also have like this very typeset print type of color that's happening. And of course, this is interesting because when it came to mid-century modern in the 20s, a lot of American illustrators used wood engraving, and I do wood engraving. And so you could retain detail that was set up better in some ways than just typical like copper plate or aluminum plate etching. You had a more durable product. But when it came to like the later periods, a lot of artists started using things like lino cut, which is a petroleum, I believe, a petroleum wood fiber based product. I use some lino cut, but this is very much like a lino cut type of illustration with very flat ink picture planes, very like contrasted features that have a simplicity to them, because lino cut is very much what you cut is what you get. It doesn't have the same intricacies or textures of wood cuts or engravings, where you can get fine details, but they're very, how do I explain it? They're very much like a logo type of this style with lino cut. It's very much very um clean color masses, either with black or with colors. Very, very there's no grit or grain across the matrix, the surface of what you're cutting. So basically, if you're going to cut a smooth line, such as his cigar smoke here, then you are going to basically get this. You're going to get very clean lines. It's not like woodcut. It's not like other forms of illustration. It certainly is not like intaglio, which is almost impossible to get, two of the same kind. So you had like mass produced various other like lino cuts, or then later metal etching, and then other forms of illustration that were in some ways out of the hands of the artist. So here you have, in the mid-century modernist style, you have basically the rise of the death of the aura, the rise of illustration as a mass consumption product. But what's interesting is that Robert Stark is painting these illustrations, because this almost looks like a billboard for Las Vegas, but it's painted. It's got its own unique flair. It's got its own sort of verve to it. It's reintroducing the aura into what is, ostensibly could be just a advertisement for Las Vegas. This I really like. This is like his one of the more complex features. This is sort of like a corner. You almost have, in some ways, um a lot of the post impressionists, they did this as well. So here's another room by Matisse. If you look at like the roads that they were painting, so if you just go on a Matisse roads, um yeah, you have like post impression. You have like a lot of like nature becoming like bombarded with these like new hues and pigments that they were starting to experiment with, that they were painting with. You have like the same feeling. But also I would point out that the corner side road, the sort of the axis of where society, gives you an impasse of where to go in these very rigid geometric lines. De Chirico also, and the Italian futurists also painted. They were fascinated with the road, and of course, De Chirico wasn't. He wasn't an Italian futurist. I mean, he was a futurist of sorts. He was a surrealist, but well, he had sympathies with certain political movements that the Italian futurist was as well. But here we have a healthful, delicious, satisfying wriggles. Gordon's. You have all this like advertising. Now it's very funny. Like I know a lot of like, Schwips. You have like a lot of modern art people as well. Like, I contemporary people. They do this thing where now the advertisement. I think that this even started like right at the birth of like mass advertisement. You sort of had a lot of, and especially in America, a lot of the American artists, they, even before Andy Warhol, they were using advertisement as an aesthetic object itself. A lot of the surrealists, a lot of the futurists that came to the American shores, they carried with them this fascination with the mass-produced object, that then, some of them even painted the mass-produced objects. They saw that the advertising signs were just as valid as, I don't know, painting a nocturne with the moon, kind of like Van Gogh's, Starry Night. um, we're almost done. Here we have a road scene. So Broadway, San Francisco. So of course in San Francisco you have these like, descending lines. So here we have the same sort of panacea of advertisement. We have a lot of like these billboards, the Broadway sort of, like, I think in Las Vegas they have their own like Broadway, the neon signs, the neon distractions. They create the aesthetic landscape that people are most attuned with in these big cities. It's just, it's very garish. It's very, so, and here's another one. I particularly like this one. I it's combining this like mid-century hard edge type of style. It's got a bit of vaporwave in it, but it also has these rooms going into back rooms, going into nowhere. I mean, it could be a theater, it could be a plaza, it could be the non-spaces that inhabit our daily life. I really, really enjoy this painting. This is amazing. Um, I like it because it's like it's almost terrifying in a way. It's like when you're a kid and you see all these neon signs in the movie theater and the mall, and then you're going into the room and it's like, ooh, what I'm gonna see, you know. It's got this like this overwhelming sense to it in a way. It's kind of, I don't know what's back there. You know, it's like it's very much your no clipping into the back rooms. I love this denotion of space, how he's managed to commandeer this like picture plane that isn't entirely like totally flat. It's got a sort of a sense of direction to it, where the lines are bouncing on and off each other, and then you're, you know, leading into this back room, you're going into this foyer, this plaza. So I really like that. And of course you have the iconic signs, you know, Motel Cafe. This is what it's it called, in America, Route 66, I think. It's, you know, it's been destroyed now. All Oh, here we go. Altoids. Is that Altos in Las Vegas? Here we have like an urban landscape, a cityscape. Um, so the restaurant, it's got a nice. I like how there's a bit of a harmony between the pink and mauve sky with the features. They don't entirely fit together. I think if you were to keep some of the pink down here a bit more, that it could work a bit better. But I do like how, and also this 8 could have been the same as this mauve, but same with this. But I guess the sign, it calls for it if it's that image. But it's a very interesting composition, though. It's he's branching off into more refined cityscapes. This one is a better cityscape. This one right here, the Copenhagen. I mean, this is it looks like pink camo that was popular in the early 2000s. But the sky is very like aestheticized. It's very like design orientated. It's not like going for any sort of realism, which suits this composition very well. And also the gradient between like something like, you know, going into dawn, you know, dusk, dawn, as the windows go, as time goes on, you notice this procession in the windows. It's almost like the windows are being lit up from the back by the fading light of the purple, pink, mauve night sky. The gradient effect that he's managed to do is very interesting. It's very nice. Okay. I like this image. I could draw or paint this image. It's very good. This one is like the Caesar Palace. I think because the night sky is so black, it's like this vaporwave hell. I hate to say it. It's like I love it, but I hate it. It's vaporwave hell. It's vaporwave hell because because it has a sort of caricature. It's got a caricature of what Las Vegas is, but it's got this like with the fading clouds and the black night sky, black purpley mauve night sky. It's got this like dreamlike quality to it that almost reminds me of the LSD simulator. It's got this nice the reflections on it are nice as well. I like how he's using bleeding colors um to do this effect of like the water fountains. I really like how there is no people here. It's very much like the non-place that Las Vegas is. It's just stark color after stark color. It's got like a good denotion of space. It's a bit illustrative in the sense that it's decorative. It's pure decoration, as Paul Talk would say. It's got like it's descending right into the middle, which of course, you know, as a fine arts painter, you want to sort of avoid the direct middle, but the descending picture plane, the focal point melting into the middle, you're going down into that casino. And I think it's good because in Las Vegas, a lot of the features are basically designed to pull you into a vortex, to pull you into the pull you into the various like baubles and attractions and money wasters of the Las Vegas interiors on the strip. So it's very much designed in that way, but it's almost like it's got this dreamlike quality to it where it's pulling you into this gambling nightmare hell, like that one episode of the Twilight Zone where the guy keeps winning, but he discovers the gangster, he's in hell. Um, I'm going to get to this landscape, but really quickly, we're almost done the actual paintings. Yeah, we have a few paintings to go. Um, but I want to save the best for last, in my opinion, which is this one. And oh no, that one too is very nice. And let's go to again another very good geometry here. Um, the Paseo in Santa Barbara, the restaurant. I like this one in that it's kind of like the illustrative type of landscapes that you would see in various restaurant interiors. It's got a nice denotion of shapes. It's got nice design to it. It's of course, everything is going right into the center. It's a vortex pulling you in, and it's one of his more muted and less pink pastel-y type of paintings, which I do like. Again, simple shapes, that's all you really need. It's very good. I also like the gradient that he's doing in terms of the um the shadows are uh of course with me, like I'm more of a tonalist, so I would like totally just, beef up the shadows, but I do like how it's very difficult to color white like this. It's like a lot of painters, a lot of the impressionists. I forget the woman's name, the lesser known impressionist. She was very good at doing these white paintings, doing different tones and shades and hues with the white. So here in the bottom we have the blue shadow gray. On the top we have more of a warmer gray that's being reflected by the warmer ceiling interior. I love how he has totally commandeered white features. He hasn't totally blackened the color, but he hasn't bleached out the colors either, to the point where they're just like totally absurd. I do like, this is a very good composition. Here we have another sign. So the Rivera, the Star, I forget what's that called? The vintage Las Vegas, the Star Hotel or whatever. The McDonald's, of course, it can't be America without McDonald's. Um, this again is another night sky painting, another nocturne. The nocturnes became very, basically the nocturnes could only become a thing around the dawn of the artificial light, more or less, and where whole cities were lit up. You could find light sources that could produce nocturne. The the only exceptions, of course, were visionary painters like Van Gogh, who of course through careful studying and observation, abstraction of what he saw at nighttime, he managed to create the night scene aesthetic object, um, which was very difficult up before that period to actually do. But of course, Las Vegas, there's no shortage of garish light sources, and so here you have more photos of Las Vegas, neon signs. To quote Robin Trower, to quote the one song "In City Dreams," the neon signs commence to shining. Uh, this one is also really good. I do like this. It's got that yellow road again. So Robert Starkey's doing this series of paintings. You have, I would sort of maybe knock down this fire escape, but for what it is, it's got like the same sort of pull into the center. This is his biggest. Um, Everything is just pulling you down the road the way that the Las Vegas Strip, and then later, Las Vegas, San Francisco, other places. I notice he's painting these locations that have this dramatic pull of the viewer's eye down a certain path or up a certain path. It's got his commandeering of seeing what painting basically what he's seeing in terms of this hidden pull that is expressed in these giant artificial landscapes in these urban centers of frivolity, excess, decadence. It's got that flair to it. And I would say that all of San Francisco is decadent for reasons that I won't discuss without, risking my YouTube channel going down. Uh, again, yeah, the here we have another one, the neon signs, the Stardust. Yeah, that's what it's called. The Lisso, the Riviera. This is like just purely an illustrative showpiece, almost like a still life, I would say, of the Las Vegas signs. And what's another good one? Let's see. He's got all of these different pictures. Um, let's see. Okay, we're at the end. I wanted to discuss finally. Um, I wanted to discuss finally this landscape that he's done. I truly think that Robert he should pursue more of the landscape because this is pure Fauvism. This is pure post impressionism. Um, San Pablo Reservoir, Teton Regional Park, um, Tilden Park. Sorry, I love this flowing denotion, the denotion of shapes with these flowing sort of abstracted masses, these rolling hills. It's got like that European post-impressionist flair. The trees have been abstracted, but they're very nice. You could have put a bit more of that pink sky into the trees. I noticed that the pink sky is sort of like mm, you could have put a bit more in the reflections in the water, but the colors, you have to realize that with post impressionism it's not so much about each color being accurate or being harmonious the way that it was, with the exception of painters like Cezanne, where he put everything in everything. A lot of the post impressionists, like Matisse himself even, a lot of the color then became you know offset with each other, and there is still like a harmony of shapes and tonalities to it and the different like tones of like light and darks. But by the time you get to like the later works, I mean, there it's just chaos. It's very much on the cusp of abstraction. And this is basically one of the abstract landscapes that you would find in like contemporary art galleries. um, the field as well is like the yellow contrast to the green, contrast to the pink. It's got that nice pop to it. Let me see if I'm missing something. So yeah, I mean, I think oh, here we go. Here we go. Raymond Wivard Bar. I think this is much more of like a sign piece, international striptease. Yeah, this is classic Las Vegas, sleazy kitsch, you could call it. I love it. He's paying an homage to this like classic vintage Las Vegas neon signage. It's such a unique Americana type of object that can only be really found in America. I hate to say. I mean, the rest of the world, of course, now, but this type of like warm salt lamp neon light type of aesthetic. It's but again, it's through the lens of modern vaporwave. It's through the lens of a returning to futures past that it's quite interesting. So I this has just been a quick video. I wanted to actually let me show you Andre. So Andre Darain, this again, let's contrast his landscape to something like his harbor painting. Um, you have these like pastelly, very like very like tube color type of landscapes that you'd find in the post impressionist oeuvre. Where is it? Where is it? Here we go. Yeah. So there you go. I just again I wanted to give a quick overview of Robert Stark's work. I think his paintings are great. His color choices aren't exactly my cup of tea. I mean, our artworks are quite different, especially with my printmaking. I pretty much just stick to black, and but I'm as much as I am more of a tonalist, I do appreciate that boldness of trying to enact an aesthetic vision with very vibrant, solid color masses. um I think that it's good in the age where people are either obsessed with realism or obsessed with like a very aesthetically pleasing, kitschy object, to have something that is, in a sense, retro, but retro futurist, but also in a sense of it could fit in the contemporary art world. It very much is crossing into outsider art. You know, people that don't usually like take on the work of art as a profession. There are other things like they're writers, they're podcasters, they're other, other types of creative endeavors. It's very interesting to see what they come up with. It's very interesting to see the way in which their artwork fits into the general scheme. And a lot of Robert Stark's work, not just his book, but also in his podcast, a lot of the sort of mid-century aesthetic comes up over and over again. He did this great podcast recently with Blauergeist, sorry, where they were talking about aesthetic posting on Twitter and so forth. And I really enjoyed this. It's a more laid back video, and hopefully you enjoyed it as well. Please go subscribe to the Stark Truth. I'll have a link to his website, his podcast. I may be doing an appearance there soon. Ha ha ha. And also, if you like this, subscribe, share, all the rest, comment, especially for the YouTube algorithm. So thank you once again. God bless you all, and especially God bless my friend Robert Stark. And oh yes, I will also link to Journey to Vapor Island. I believe he's going to come out with another edition or a part 2 or something. I have to talk to him about that. But please go and buy his book. It's totally degenerate, it's totally shocking, it's totally not trad, but it's a great work of literature. It so encapsulates the times of like the later 2010s, like 2016 onwards. It really is a piece in time that I think is very worthy, and I would like to explore it further as well. It's been quite a while since I've read it. So, like I've said, God bless you all. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and goodbye.